I have people writing to me from all over the world who are saying they're doing that. They're saying, well, I cleaned up my room and then I stopped saying stupid things and my God, it's like things are way better. It's like, who would have guessed it? And so it's low-hanging fruit, man. Because that's the other thing. If there's a lot of things wrong with you, then it's really easy to start fixing it, You got there's so much territory that you can inhabit. I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee. That's good. I mean, the whole nation thing, that's positive. But to have God on your side, that's, you might want that. When things get rough, that would be good. And make thy name great. And thou shalt be a blessing. Wonderful. That's a good deal. And I will bless them that bless thee. That's good too. And curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. That's something. That's something. It wouldn't be something if you could wake up and your day was composed in part of people thanking you for all the good things you've done in the world. Wouldn't that be good? It's not impossible for that to happen. So Abram departed. Yes, as the Lord had spoken unto him. And Lot went with him. And Abram was 70 and 5 years when he departed out of Haran. That's old. Now Abraham lives a long time, but this is also part of the story. So he has a wife who can't have children. He has nothing. Obviously, he's been hanging around Dad's shack for a little too long, given that he's 75, right? It's time to get a fire lit underneath him a bit. And so he's not got much going for him, but he still decides to move forward. And I've seen this too, like if you don't have your destiny in hand by your time you're 30, it's rough. You start hurting. And if you don't have your destiny in hand by the time you're 40, then you really start hurting. And 40 is a real fork in the road. The fork in the road, that's always where you meet the devil, by the way. And that's because every time you have to make a decision, the possibility of evil beckons. That's why that is. I had a friend, I've told you a little about him, and he killed himself just after 40. He had had a book published with a very small press. He was quite a good writer, but he could not get himself together, and it hit him too hard at 40. And I'm not saying that it's hopeless at 40. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that partly because of these verses, but also partly because of what I've seen in my clinical practice. I've had people come to me who have had very chaotic and ill-spent lives, let's say, who were in that neighborhood of age. And it's true for people who are older as well, who then decided to make a real effort and to try to make where they were better, instead of being bitter about where they weren't, because that's the bitterness that really does you in. It's really not good. It's the opposite of gratitude. It's the manifestation of resentment. It makes you malevolent. It's very, very bad to be bitter. It's hell to be bitter. And if you're 40 and you're not successful, then you have to accept your lot and you have to start to improve what's right in front of you. And if you do that, it doesn't take very long. It's quite interesting to watch people. Things can be a lot better in 6 months, and they can be way better in 2 years. Like, it's a struggle, uphill struggle, but it's by no means impossible. And I don't know, again, what the limit of that is. I suppose it depends to some degree on the degree of your commitment. But anyway, so it's another indication of the real validity of this story. God isn't setting this up to be easy, right? Abraham's old, and his wife is old too, and more than that, she's barren. How is he going to be the father of nations? How is he going to be successful? Well, the initial departure point is insufficient, radically insufficient. And that's very inspiring, because it means that you can start from where you are. And it's worth asking yourself. It's like, drop what you're doing that's foolish, that you know is foolish, and pick an aim that's worthwhile, to make things better for yourself, like you're worth taking care of, like you're worth something, and to surround yourself with people who believe the same and who are rejoicing in your accomplishments and unhappy when you fail, right? And you're comparing yourself to your accomplishments of yesterday and not to someone else's today, so that you're not jealous and bitter. And you put your own house in order so that you're not cursing the world when some of its disarray might be your fault. And you're trying to pursue something meaningful, and you're doing your best to tell the truth and all of that. And then you see what happens. Who the hell are you? You know, you think you're a miracle of some bloody bizarre sort. We've been around for 3.5 billion years. You know, every single one of your relatives propagated successfully. And here you are, against all possible odds, in this world of hell in some sense, and bitterness and tyranny and malevolence. And yet God only knows what's inside you, this capacity for consciousness, the capacity to confront potential and to turn it into something good. That's us, man. That's the Western story. That's the individual as the cornerstone of the state. That's our responsibility, and it really is who we are. If there's something you want, you need about 5 arguments about why you want it, because the probability that the person who's opposing you will have 5 arguments about why you shouldn't have it is very low. They just won't have thought it through enough. So the other thing that happens in the future authoring exercise is that you're asked to articulate the reasons for all the goals that come out of your vision of the future. So you're asked, like, why would it be good for you? Why would it be good for your family? Why would it be good for broader society? So that gives you 3 levels of argumentation right there. And if you have it articulated down into detail and it's related to other important goals, then you're a hell of a thing to argue with, because people just aren't that deep, by which I mean they just don't have that many levels of explanation or objection. And it's also really useful in relationship to your own mind, because if you want to do something that's difficult and that requires energy, a lot of different subsystems in your mind are going to throw up objections. It's like, well, maybe that isn't what you should be doing right now. Maybe you should be doing the dishes or vacuuming or watching TV or looking at YouTube. Or if you're really sneaky, when you're trying to do something hard, what your brain does is give you something else hard to do that's not quite as hard, so that you can feel justified in not doing the thing you're supposed to because you're doing something else useful. And if you give in to that temptation, which you often will, then it wins, and because it wins, it gets a little dopamine kick and it grows stronger. Anything you let win, the internal argument, grows. And anything you let be defeated shrinks, because it's punished. It doesn't get to have its way. So that's another thing really to remember. Don't practice what you do not want to become. And because they're neurological circuits, you build those things in there, man. They're not going anywhere. You can build another little machine to inhibit them. That's the best you can do. Once they're in there, you can't get them out. And then the ones you build to inhibit can be taken out by stress, and the old habits will come back up. So you got to be careful what you say and what you do, because you build yourself that way. Well, you become what you practice. And so if you're high in neuroticism, it's going to take a lot of practice to get you all calmed down. But that's what you do in psychotherapy with people all the time, because a large number of people who are in therapy have higher than average levels of negative emotion, and you help them become stronger. And the way you do that is by strategizing with them and encouraging them to confront the things that they're afraid of and avoiding, and they become more able and more courageous as a consequence of doing so. And you can shift people quite a lot doing that, and that's what you do when you learn, and that's how you teach kids. And it's the universal mechanism of adaptation, and you try to speed that up in psychotherapy, and you can do that for yourself. Like this is a really useful routine. So look, you got a goal, and you'll see that as you progress towards the goal, there'll be obstacles that emerge, and some of them you don't want to confront. You're going to shy away from them. So maybe I have a client and they're being tyrannized at work and they need to get another job. And to do that, they have to put their CV in order, and they're embarrassed about their CV, and they don't even want to open the file on their computer that contains their CV, which they haven't looked at for 10 years and which contains nothing but a record of their dismal failures in the past as far as they're concerned. And that's a box that's locked, that's Pandora's box with a dragon in it, and they don't want to go anywhere near it. And no wonder,
But if they're going to get another job, well, unless they get their resume together, they're stuck under the thumb of their local tyrant, and that's not a good deal. And so often what you do with someone like that is you say, just print your resume. Don't even look at the bloody thing. Just print it, turn it upside down, put it in an envelope, and bring it to the session the next week. And then the person will come back and say, that task that we agreed on, because you have to agree on these things, I didn't do it. I couldn't even sit at the computer. And so then you say, well, do you think this week you could just sit at the computer and think about opening your resume? And they might say, yes. And then they come back the next week and said, I didn't even sit at the computer and think about my resume. And then you walk the person through turning on their computer and then opening up the dread folder and then reading the title of the horrible dragon resume and then maybe opening it. And then you say, that's good enough for this week. And then maybe the person can go home and just open their damn resume. And then maybe they can print it out and bring it to you. And then maybe you can go through the sub-reptiles one by one, and clean out the snakes. It's like, well, what were you doing between 2011 and 2013? And the answer is, that is the last thing that I want to discuss with anyone, right? So there's a lacuna, there's a hole in the account, in the autobiographical account, and chaos itself is looking through that with all that disorder and shame and malevolence lurking in the background, and no one wants to look at that and think, well, you didn't do a very good job between 2012 and 2013, and you've got a hole in your record, and we need to do something about that now. And so, how do we address that so that you have a coherent account of yourself? Look, this could take a good while, right, to put that all back together. That's your whole past, to put that together in a manner that you could confidently bring forward to a new potential employer. But it's worth it if you escape from tyranny and you now have a coherent account of yourself and you atoned for your past inadequacies, let's say. You're ready to move forward, and partly what you do in therapy and partly what you should do with yourself is not hide all that in the fog, so you know where you are, so you figure out where you're going, and then practice doing that. And then as you practice doing that, then that's what you become, and that will lower your proclivity to negative emotion, definitely, as you put your life together. Why it's useful to order your room. Chaotic room makes you anxious. Why? Too many pathways, man. You walk into someone's room and you think, what the hell is going on here? Maybe that's your teenager's bedroom. And you've pretty much summed it up in the question. It's like, yeah, it's a little slice of hell in that room, And how do you feel when you're there? Like you'd rather be anywhere else. And no wonder, because everything in the room is broadcasting chaos and disorder at you. So that's another thing I used to do with my clients, typical behavioral maneuver, which is, if you're anxious, organize your surroundings a bit. Simplify, declutter, organize bit by bit. Order, habitable order. The habitable order that is good. All of that. It's a recreation of the original Eden, metaphysically speaking. And you can do that very practically, and then you practice that, and that'll sort you out.